Well, good afternoon, everybody. Now, isn't this fun? A little bit different activity here for everyone. Instead of just a regular old podcast, I threw it up on a Google presentation here for you for your enjoyment, and you can listen and follow along, and please take notes on what we're doing here today. Kind of the second half of our bureaucracy here. If you're watching this, it means you've already completed the chapter 15 guided readings, which the sub should have already instructed you to complete. So please do that if you haven't done so already. Well, so let's get going here. Talk a little bit about bureaucracy. Um, the last time we met, we talked about the cabinet posts, and when you're talking about the presidential cabinet, each cabinet department has a head. They typically call them a secretary. Lots and lots of layers of responsibility. The most noted cabinet departments are the State Department, which does foreign policy, the Treasury Department, which does money, and the Department of Defense, which talks about national security. Although, like I said, like we said on Wednesday, cabinet departments have grown over time as the federal priorities change, as the government gets bigger. Like, for example, now we have the Department of Education that's trying to reform public education in America, which is why you guys get to take all these great tests. And we also have the Department of Health and Human Services, which implements many changes in the way healthcare will be provided to millions of people. And you see Obamacare kind of falls under this area as well. Another thing that's part of the bureaucracy of our government are what we call independent agencies. Um, these are agencies like NASA, like the CIA, like the EPA, that are independent agencies that operate independently of the government but are part of the federal bureaucracy. For example, NASA, the National Aeronautic and Space Administration, which studies and explores regions outside of our atmosphere. They're responsible for that, which, by the way, if you ever get a chance to go to Mission Control in Houston, Texas, phenomenal place. Um, the Central Intelligence Agency gathers and interprets foreign intelligence to keep us safe. And the EPA develops policies and programs to clean our environment. They've been in the news a lot lately as a bureaucratic agency because they are not being transparent with all their documents they're supposed to make public. So they've been come under fire a lot here lately because, as a bureaucratic agency, you do have to share your information with the public. Another part of the bureaucracy that's interesting is the government kind of runs corporations. Couple examples of this are the post office and Amtrak. Right, the U.S. Postal Service delivers our mail, and Amtrak delivers us to our destinations via the trains. Yeah, so the government does run corporations too that are part of the bureaucracy. And remember, whenever you're thinking about the federal bureaucracy, understand it's organized in order to get us government services in as an efficient manner as possible. And when you think about all the things that the government has to do and the diversity of the constituents, not always a super easy thing to do. A couple other things when you're talking about the bureaucracy, kind of think of the president and the executive branch and how they interact with one another. A lot of times after a president is inaugurated, you hear the word the administration a lot. This refers to the government as it's led by the new president and his team. A lot of times the president will get frustrated with their inability to dramatically change the bureaucracy. A lot of presidents try to reform it, but those reforms often fail. And some presidents, like President Obama, expand the bureaucracy when you look at things like his health care plan. The reason that over 2 million public employees of the bureaucracy will still be working in their jobs after the president's term is over is because it is so huge. It's so huge that it could never be destroyed. And the vast scale and scope of the executive branch transcends any possible look at micromanagement, which is kind of what we talked a little bit about on Wednesday. Once you're part of the bureaucracy and once your bureaucratic agency is established, it's there, and you're not getting rid of it. Common thing that you hear from presidents a lot is you will say, do this and do that, but nothing ever gets done. But nevertheless, the administration has to accept the blame when bureaucratic mistakes and invariable missteps happen. So the president does get blamed for the problems of the bureaucracies. Let's talk about the bureaucracy with their legislative authority. And you're going to have a little assignment that you do with this as well. Congress's laws that they pass are often very, very vague. Um, and this gives either intended or unintended power to bureaucrats who are left to interpret these laws in the field. Basically, in other words, regulators of the federal government are given legislative authority, and these things that they do and decisions that they make have the same effect as law. For example, the Environmental Protection Agency can write rules and regulations that affect and impact air quality. Um, an act of Congress authorizes them to do so and may even provide funding. But the details of these laws to deal with clean air and clean water are often written by and enforced by the bureaucrats. So a lot of things and rules and regulations that we have to follow in our country aren't even passed by Congress. Again, vague laws are passed by Congress, but all the details and rules and regulations of those laws are filled in by the bureaucrats. Let's take a listen about bureaucracy and judicial authority. This is interesting as well because there are disputes that occur in these bureaucratic agencies, um, and they've been given authority to determine their own resolutions. They actually have what we call administrative tribunals, and these tribunals are not part of the Constitution, but they are there. One example of this tribunal is what we call the Interstate Commerce Commission, and these are appointed officials that are responsible for enforcing laws that govern transportation, which one of these things include the regulation of shipping rates. When disputes arise, the commission has the authority to render a decision with the authority of law, and you don't ever go to court, you don't ever have a lawyer, you don't ever see a judge, there isn't ever a jury. These administrative tribunals make decisions, and they have the same effect as a court of law. Let's take a minute here and take a look at how Congress controls the bureaucracy. Right? A lot of times their controlling of the bureaucracy involves public hearings that hold bureaucratic agencies accountable for what they do. Take, for example, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, after Hurricane Katrina in 2005 and the disaster of a relief effort. Congress did hold people accountable, and many bureaucrats lost their jobs. Another big way that Congress controls the bureaucracy is through the power of the purse. Without money, bureaucratic agencies cannot function. They might exist, but they do not exist in a very good way. And that's a big thing to think about too when you think about money. Like, agencies definitely need money to function. Another congressional control of the bureaucracy is through these things that are formed that are called iron triangles. And when these are formed, they reduce the impact of congressional oversight. They're also known as issue networks. They are made up of congressional committees, federal agencies, and special interest groups. And usually these interest groups and agencies and committees all share the same goals, and these iron triangles are protected from any real reform. You take a look at the graphic here on the next slide. You can see kind of the setup when we say iron triangle or issue network. The interest groups, the bureaucratic agencies, and the legislative committees all work together to address an issue. It could be something as minor as getting tomato paste to be considered to be a vegetable, or something as minor as how much liquid will go in a can of button mushrooms. All those things are regulated by bureaucratic agencies, influenced by interest groups, and enforced and carried out through legislative committees. All right, so that's that on the bureaucracy. If you have questions about it, make sure you let me know, and send me an email, and we'll get you taken care of. Also, if you have any missing work to turn in, you can give that to me on Monday, and we will take care of that. Any extra credit to turn in on Monday, you can take care of that. Um, but what you should work on now, if you're finished, pull out that regulation writing assignment from yesterday, or from the last time we met, not yesterday. And I want you to start working on that. Think back to what we talked about the rules and regulations that bureaucratic agencies create, and read the directions for that assignment and come up with your own rules and regulations for these laws. And again, if you have questions, shoot me an email or let me know. Have a great day.